They are shot in Paraguay, they are produced in Paraguay, acted by Paraguayans. Welcome to the Flick Club. I'm Karri. My co-host is Henrik. How are you, motherfucker?
I'm motherfucker. Pretty well. All motherfucking being considered.
This is the motherfucking podcast where one goes around the world in 200 films and never manages to touch on South America. Yeah. We've been there once before and we try to fix the SA or South America quota here little by little if Henrik is willing.
I've been, I have to come clean and confess, I've been somewhat hesitant to actually pull off this stunt. Not because of South America, not because today's country in question, but simply because I've been somewhat lukewarm to the idea of what is going to be today's episode, which is us taking a country X and choosing like top 3 IMDb rated movies from the given country and watching through those. My reasoning for my hesitation has always been that I've been somewhat suspicious of exactly how clear of a picture of a theme you can find using this method. Like if you choose one director, you can obviously look at his filmography, his body of work, and you can try to analyze what type of dude this director is. Or if you choose a theme and choose your movies according to the said theme, well, then obviously you have a theme to talk about in your episode. But with going with this, we take 3 highest rated movies from somewhere. It's going to mean that, well, necessarily that the genres, the directors, the themes that are being approached, they don't stay consistent in the movies. They could be all over the place, which has kept me quite careful with trying this stunt. But well, with today's episode standing, I must confess that I have been wrong and I stand corrected.
All right, interesting. I've been dreading of this idea as well, but I wanted to take this tour. We've been very experimental lately with our themes, to say the least, I guess. And I thought that this was an idea that was thrown around by our ex-co-host Zach, and I didn't really properly warm up to the idea because I was afraid of that, but. As you said, yeah, there's always the risk that there's going to be just way too much of different genres and it just doesn't seem to gel so well together. On the other hand, this could be a great gateway, the gateway drug, if you will, to the country's movies and how the country presents itself and kind of like an access package. Like here's your starter package to Paraguay, and maybe via this experiment you and experience, then you are more willing to explore more and you understand more. You know, I guess you were reading a little bit of this and that. And Paraguay, to begin with, it's a country that shamefully can't say I knew really nothing about prior to this episode. Yeah, what's your experience with Paraguay?
I actually have exactly the same experience. Paraguay is one of the countries that usually us Finns are not that concerned about. We our case usually lies in the typical suspects. Of course, our like Nordic country brethren, Russia for obvious reasons, us sharing some borderland with them, and then the usual European countries and America. And that's about it. Like when it comes to Paraguay, when it comes to Venezuela, when it comes to Indonesia, what have you. Usually there are countries that well, the Finnish perspective just does not pay any close eye to unless there is some extra special, most often than not, a negative, massive upheaval going on that would somehow, for some reason, pique our interest.
Yeah, and it might take like a bigger bit of an extra effort to put your head in the direction of Paraguay. And well, I'm happy that we're doing this episode now. We're much wiser in this podcast. Well, we're from Finland. If you haven't guessed, if you haven't seen our show notes, and yeah, we have dabbled a little bit of filmmaking, and Henrik has been doing, well, God knows what the hell, music videos. And,
Even I don't know what I have been doing, or what I'm going to do, or what I'm doing at the moment. But I do know that I still have my pants on, so that's something.
I've been mainly in some TV productions, but that was already a really long time ago in a galaxy universe far away. I was kind of part of some of the more well seen, more consumed TV at the time, so it was interesting from a little company that has grown a little bit since then. But anyway, we're here to talk about Paraguay, and we usually have this kind of a cohesive theme. Now it's a kind of an experiment. Let's see how this goes. And at the end of the episode, we have this quickies section where we just go point by point, raise some different questions about the movies that we've seen in this episode, and kind of wrap it all up. And then we finally exit the lab for your listening pleasure. Yeah. Any housekeeping, or let's just get to it?
Well, let's just get into it.
Yeah, or not really. Let's talk about Paraguay a little bit for our listeners, because where is Paraguay? First of all, it's bang on in the middle of South America. At least when I look at the map, I don't know like geographically exactly, but yeah, and it's a landlocked country in South America, bordered by Argentina, Brazil, Bolivia. Do you have something to add?
all well-known first world countries.
Yeah, there has been a lot of there has been a lot of war between these countries. I'm not taking any sides in this matter, but yeah, they do have river access to the Atlantic Ocean, apparently via Brazil. There is anyway a crisscrossing river that goes all the way to the Atlantic, and a population of about 7 million, almost similar to Finland. We have 5.4, 5.5, whatever it is today, exactly 5.6, and 3 million of these people live in the capital, Asunción. Spaniards came in the area and converted the Guarani people to the Spanish ways a long time ago. And after the independence from Spain in the 19th century, authoritarian nationalists and isolationist, protectionist governments ruled, and this ended in the Paraguayan War in 1864 to 1870. About half of the population of Paraguay died, and 25 to 33% of land was seized to Argentina, Brazil, and Uruguay. Then there was Chaco War from 1932 to 1935 against Bolivia. Paraguay prevailed. Then there was a slew of military dictatorships, and Alfredo Stroessner must be the most famous one of those. And finally, after near to 40 years of rule, he was ousted with the help of military in a military coup in 1989. And now Paraguay has been since then a democratic, developing country. Still some problems in the politics, no doubt. And the modern Guarani language has prevailed and is spoken in various dialects with Spanish. So if I understand correctly, it's kind of like almost like a 50-50 split in the Spanish and Guarani speaking. And they seem to mix it interchangeably when speaking. So it's very interesting. So Guarani it has elements of Spanish. It has history with Spanish and has some mix and history from the times when there were different tribes and people speaking different languages in Spain, and it all coalesced, and now it is the Guarani that we know today. World's happiest place according to 2017 Positive Experience Index. Despite all of these problems, there's a lot of crime still and poverty. But why are we watching these films now, Henrik?
Well, is there any reason why we shouldn't be watching these films?
Yeah.
I honestly don't know. Like, we both already mentioned that we were kind of hesitant with doing this and making this type of episode. And I don't actually know what changed. At least what changed for me to finally actually show green light for us to going with Paraguayan cinema.
Yeah, why not? This was just something that came to my mind. Okay, let's think of a country from South America. Paraguay. Perfect. Don't know anything. Let's find out. The films we'll watch today are selected though with kind of a as careful and as logical system that I could think of. They are shot in Paraguay, they are produced in Paraguay, at least partly, acted by Paraguayans, at least mostly, and we had like a kind of a logic in how we selected these films from the IMDb, because obviously if you go to IMDb and you select the 3 best rated movies from there, it will just give you like results of somebody's home movie done in 1974, and with one rating for that particular movie, and then it would be kind of the same story for the rest of the film. So it would be just sorted by the rating, really. So we needed to figure something out. So what I had as a basis was that the film has to have at least 100 ratings on IMDb, and it has to be essentially a Paraguayan movie, not like an American movie that is shot in Paraguay or anything like that. Paraguayan cinema, by the way, it's a very tiny industry. There are some other films that we could have looked at, but according to this method that we have now, we couldn't. We could have looked at the Hamaca Paraguaya, which is a slow art film, the Paraguayan hammock, which would have been the third film for us to watch today, but we decided we're just gonna go purely by the rating and the 100 vote system. But as it happens today, we have 2 films that are directed by the 2 same guys. So if we would have wanted to have a little bit of more variety, we could have chosen the Paraguayan hammock instead of the other film. For example, I guess we would have dropped in that case The Gold Seekers.
Yeah, and then again, going with that road would have mean that we would have been kind of tweaking the rules of how we choose the movies even more. Like, you already narrowed it down. It has to be. It has to come from the said country. It has to have more than. It has to have over 100 ratings, and those already. And also the fact that, you know, with those tags in place, what is the highest rated movie in IMDb? So we already had like 3 limiting qualifications for the movies that we chose, and had we gone with the hammock movie instead of Gold Seekers, it would have kind of meant that we would have then we would have been tinkering with a 4th variable here, a 4th thing that kind of limits what movies we are going to check out. And I guess at this point 3 is enough limitations for our qualification process for the chosen movies. So I was kind of on the side that we don't need to make it so extra difficult as to also take into a point that no 2 movies can have the same director.
Right. Well, before we really get to the mac and cheese here, or what have you, the history, if you prefer mac and cheese to anything else, well, whatever. The history of the cinema in Paraguay, it's tiny, as I told you. But the first films shot in Paraguay were silent charts in the 1900s. Actually, it was done by an Argentinian director, Ernesto Gunche, but Hipólito Carrón a 10-minute silent film, was the first ever Paraguayan film, filmed in 1925, and the first film shot in Paraguay to use sound was 1932 Argentine documentary, but the first feature finally was in Codicia 1955, an Argentina-Paraguay co-production, and there's plenty of Argentine-Paraguayan co-productions. And after, of course, the reign of Alfredo Stroessner, the aforementioned bad person who was leading the country as a dictator for about 40 years, then the cinema started to open up as well, and finally there were some funds and even like a tiniest of interest from the government side and from the public side to make Paraguayan cinema. So they were finally able to make in 1990 the foundation of Fundación Cinemateca del Paraguay, so foundation of cinema, and this allowed for some more tools for funding for these films. And in 2000s, really, I would say that we have seen now the Paraguayan cinema rise, and people have started to take some notice. And the big problem in the country itself is that many people don't seem to go and gravitate towards their own cinema. The markets are dominated, as everywhere, just by the local film industry, in this case Argentine films, and of course the United States. And 2017 there was a bill of audiovisual promotion which allowed the creation of National Film Institute of Paraguay, making things even easier. And let's just jump right into it. How do you want to go about this, Henrik? Do you want to go into the duo directors and their movies first, or?
I don't know. I guess we can kind of just go them film by film, starting with, with Seven Boxes and Gold Seekers, since those share the director.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure if that's like they're the best way to go with. Like, keep in mind, audiences, that today's episode, this is very much a proof of concept episode from us, where we are also trying to figure out the quirks of exactly doing this type of content and looking different countries this way. So it's not have been, like, the concept here has not been ironed out. And because of that, I really don't know like what would be the optimal way to approach these movies, or to make this episode.
Well, we know that directors of Seven Boxes and Gold Seekers are Juan Carlos Maneglia and Tana Schémbori. These are Paraguayan well-known super duo who have directed TV, shorts and feature films so far, very, very well known in the country, and Juan Carlos is a Bachelor of Science and Communication, and did a short film for Film Workshop in NYFA, the New York Film Academy. Siete Cajas, or Seven Boxes, it's the highest grossing film in Paraguay still, as I understand, and the Gold Seekers was the Paraguayan entry to the 19th Oscars, or the Academy Awards.
Which also is a good reason for us to keep the Gold Seekers on the films to watch list today.
Yeah, fair enough, even though you hate the Oscars with all of your might.
Even though I do hate the Oscars, but since we are toying with once again a new kind of new concept for the show, I kind of do feel that having a guidelight like the fact that one of these films were put forward for reconsideration to contest for the best foreign picture in Oscars, it's kind of it works as a way for us to kind of sort out what we are going to watch. And unfortunately, with Paraguayan Hammock, that wouldn't have been the case. Like, we would have once again lost one more marker that we now were able to use to kind of figure out exactly what are the movies that we are going to talk about.
Precisely, an interesting quote from the duo. We always dream of a Paraguayan cinema that identifies with us continuously to find our identity. End quote. And Yeah, this is very evident in the films. They try to cramp up in a bit of the Paraguayan history and the Paraguayan locale. Not only the fancy places and the beautiful parts, but especially in Seven Boxes case, you kind of see the ugly sides, and they don't really hold it back. Even make kind of fun of it, and highly enjoyable and engaging.
I too did take note of that quote.
Yeah.
And I must say, I have really mixed feelings about the quote. And because of the quote, I also have very mixed feelings about the whole Paraguayan cinema altogether. Because it does hold true, in my opinion, to a point. Like, for me, in Seven Boxes, I see very much, a Paraguayan filmmakers trying to build up Paraguayan identity through cinema. But then when I looked at the Code Seekers, I just couldn't help but be thinking about, this smells a lot like America.
Maybe the Gold Seekers is a very interesting choice for 90th or Academy Awards, because if you would have chosen something, if you could have had something there, Seven Boxes, definitely. Gold Seekers, maybe more traditional, the entire, something that applies and engages the entire family. A family movie with some adventure and thriller and fun elements. Maybe not like something that you would be able to sell outside of the country outright, but it's a fun film.
I'm on the side that, in my opinion, when it comes to these movies, The Code Seekers is the easiest one to sell, like, worldwide. When it comes to international cinema, and when it comes to like cinema as a content, cinema for everyone, I would say Code Seekers is perhaps the easiest one from today's gathering of movies to actually push on that market. When it comes to, or on the other hand, when it comes to kind of having a film that strongly feels independent, when it comes to a movie that like really has the tone that this couldn't be made anywhere else. Well, in that case, in my opinion, The Code Seekers is the weakest movie that we have today. And seeing how the Oscars, well, first of all, Oscars always are a shit tier award, unfortunately, because so much of what happens to, cozy up the Americans this year plays into what gets qualified, and more so into what actually wins the prize. But like the Oscar Academy, they always wanna give you this idea, this image that what they value in international cinema is the individuality. It does not exactly hold true, but that's what they wanna tell you. And against that idea, like that not gonna say outright lie, but that image that they wanna present to you, against the image, it's kind of weird to put so American-like movie as The Code Seekers up for the competition. Like, I would have believed that Seven Boxes would have had a higher chance of winning the international movie Oscar than The Code Seekers.
Yeah, it definitely has influences. That the Gold Seekers, it's a movie that we have in a sense seen 1,000 times, but it's just different kind of a rendition that we have here. It's really well made. A lot of love and thought has been put into it, and I think even plot-wise it might be having a little bit more than some of the similar films, adventure films for the whole family from the United States. But yeah, I mean, if you're looking for some more originality, perhaps, then yeah, definitely Seven Boxes is something to see from Paraguay.
Yeah, the thing with The Code Seekers is that when I was watching it, I was constantly thinking that, yeah, this sure smells like national treasure. basically, I'm not saying that it's copying National Treasure. I know that, my statement is somewhat inflammatory here, but I'm not saying that The Code Seekers is a bad movie. I'm not saying that it did anything wrong, and most definitely I'm not saying that it's a copycat of The National Treasure. But when it comes to tone, when it comes to kinda, if we would have if we would have a concept of the essence of cinema or essence of a movie, this type of an inner quality that a film could have, I would say that when it comes to Code Seekers and National Treasure, they share a hell of a lot of the same essence.
Yeah, right. Maybe by looking at the trailers, maybe by looking at the film itself, maybe by looking at some of the cinematography, you might feel that, oh, okay, this is a little unconventional. Okay, I haven't seen that before. Okay, it's just a little wonky cut, to be honest. In the beginning of the film, I was just looking at this one moment where our lead character is riding the bike in the one direction. It's kind of like a full body shot, and then in the next shot we have him in the frame, in the bang on in the middle of the frame, and the motion is towards us. Not that it matters, but it looks a little weird when we cut from like where the character is bang on in the center of the screen, and then we cut on to the next shot that is exactly like that. The character is bang on in the middle of the screen, walking towards us, and usually you don't really see that much. Maybe if you want to be a little experimentalist, okay, but there were a couple of moments like that. I was thinking, that feels a little funny to my eyes. Did you get that effect in the first 5 minutes of the film?
I kinda did. It wasn't really strong for me. For me, the moment that kind of marks the five minutes, or the thing that I remember from the first 5 minutes of the movie is the semi-gritty and this is gonna sound terrible, but poor rendition of the typical grave robber scene from Indiana Jones or what have you. Like you have those movies, Indiana Joneses and National Treasures and the likes. You always have the moment when somebody is breaking into the tomb or the dark cave, and they are like lowering themselves with a rope and a winch and what have. And you know this scene. You've seen it. It's traditional in these type of stories, and the Code Seekers does the exact same thing, except in here, instead of a tomb in middle of the darkest jungle, or I don't know, a Byzantine library hidden under the streets of Boston or something like that. But instead of those, what you have a warehouse and a small hole there, and that's kind of like the running image that I had for the first 5 minutes. So even though I did notice the same problems that you notice about the cinematography and how the characters are composed on the image, to me it was not that limiting factor. It didn't ruin the first 5 minutes for me, and it wasn't. I did notice it, but it didn't really rise up into my eyes as something that I would pay a huge attention to. It was kind of a background thing for me.
Yeah, though it feels very conscious choice, and I think these are very experienced filmmakers still. So I think that was on purpose. Maybe just try to break the rules a little bit. I think it's just my conditioning as a film watcher that jumped a bit, but never mind if you know. So let's just get on with it. It's not that kind of a big of a deal. What about the production values and the whole story? I felt that it was actually surprisingly well made. It doesn't feel that it's done on such a low budget. On some places, maybe the lighting, some of the angle choices, I don't know. But there's some really nice cinematography here. Some of those aerial shots some of those frozen in motion shots where looking at it's like a landscape shot and you see a bicycle there or some motorcycle, and a lot of attention has been paid to this, that it feels like it's breathing.
I must stress out that I'm not saying, I'm not saying that the movie is bad. I'm not saying that the movie is poorly made or it looks cheap. But in my opinion, when it comes to the production budget, the limitations, you do see them in Code Seekers more strongly than in our other two movies, Seven Boxes and the Heiresses. And that, in my opinion, the reason why that kind of shows up in your radar, why Code Seekers is the one where the budget is perhaps the most noticeable, is the reason that the genre altogether that they are playing with, the treasure hunter adventure movie genre, we, at least in Europe, at least in Finland, we all have been spoiled by the American mega budget, blockbuster cinema.
Yeah.
Like, we have seen these stories being told with so much higher budget that than what Code Seekers had to play with, that we automatically kind of like, we subconsciously, we expect to see something there that the Code Seekers really can't offer to you. Like, to us, the treasure hunter cinema is like, it is a huge tomb somewhere, and it's a lavish chase scenes where you have 5 trucks full of Nazis, and Indiana Jones is going, under and over and sideways ways of a truck. We have been trained to expect the cutting edge of CGI. Like, we have, that's kind of what we have been conditioned to. Yeah, and Code Seekers, obviously, it can't have that. And smartly, once again, to point out that it's not a bad film, and it's not really like, I make a huge thing about the budget, but it really is not a deal breaker here. Code Seekers smartly avoids this by toning down its story to a ground level and playing with that, in a way where it does not have to have all the set pieces of an Indiana Jones movie. But unfortunately, because of our conditioning, it also means that we do recognize also that the reality that these choices have partly most been made because of the budgets. Because Code Seekers doesn't have $250 million to spend on the filmmaking. So it can't have all the National Treasure gimmickry playing around, so it tones down its story. All fine and well, but unfortunately, because of all the National Treasure bullshit, we also kind of realize that, this is also a budget reasoning that goes on behind here.
Yeah. Maybe The Gold Seeker is the kind of a movie that you shouldn't analyze to death. It's just a really fun movie, I think. It's fun to follow. It's great to, of course, this is the problem with the goddamn extreme subjectivity, and I think it's really highlighted with movies like this, where we have, this is kind of a national treasure in a way that, wow, maybe for Paraguayans as well, where they're looking at this movie and, oh, this is our little national treasure. We really haven't made any films like this. I totally love that we're doing something like this. And it's not only that we have seen this kind of filmmaking in the US already, but the setting is really important, that it's happening in Paraguay, in their national setting. And I think it gives it that whole much more meaning when you're looking at it. And of course it's super subjective now, even more so, because we are just two doofuses from Finland, and we're looking at this film, maybe our first viewings of any Paraguayan cinema ever. I can't really I don't know, probably. But the thing is, for us, it seems a bit special we haven't seen Paraguayan cinema before. Maybe for Paraguayans, it also feels really special and they hold it close to their heart. It is kind of a national treasure type of film, but it still has that cultural identity, and I think that makes the big difference.
It does. And, like, if you are a long-time follower of the podcast, you already know that I'm the type of person who starts with the criticism and then gets into the more appraising stuff in my takes. So let me get also into the appraisal territory. Like, when it comes to the Code Seekers and, for example, the National Treasure, like, I gave a lot of shit about, the budget, etc. But the fact still remains. As a movie, Code Seekers has more to say than what National Treasure has. And Code Seekers presents to you a much harsher take. It has more themes than what National Treasure has. National Treasure, the only theme that it really had was the celebration of an American exceptionalism. The franchise itself basically is nothing more than a bunch of Americans just flexing their dicks about how great American is and how Abraham Lincoln was a great person, etc., 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 etc. Like, the whole films revolve around just, bunch of American assholes wanted to get the Lincoln's hair locket or proving whose granddaddy was a true patriot or some shit like that. And that's all there is. But in Code Seekers, you actually have a societal theme to be found out. And that's, like, when I started the episode, I said that I was wrong in my hesitation to do this episode, and I stand corrected. Watching these three movies that we watched today, I actually clearly saw a running theme throughout all these movies. And it's a theme that also the Code Seeker shares. And that theme is that capitalist system has completely failed, creates a hell of a lot of inequality, and fuck capitalism. And, it's a hot take that National Treasure never can even dream of having.
Interesting take. It's really a fun, happy-go-lucky kind of movie. That the events, if you think about them in a way that you would like to approach it from a more realistic perspective, no, you can't find anything that really makes sense in the film. There's many too stupid mistakes that the lead characters do. Starting off with, oh my god, the guy finally gets around the property and then starts hopping around and trying to kind of test the distances in the yard, and immediately he is captured by security cameras and 2, 3, 4, 5 people, and then they tell about the whole plan basically to everybody that they can possibly tell about it. So it's amazing that it didn't go even more wrong, but yeah, it's something that I will not really blame the movie so much. It's just... yeah.
If something, it actually grants the proceedings a level of realism. Because once again, harken back to National Treasure or Indiana Jones. What you have there is part superhuman individuals who, without any type of training, Indiana Jones is a goddamn college professor. Remind you, or university professor, but anyways, he's a goddamn educator. And yet the movies frame these individuals as people who can somehow either wiggle out centuries-old death traps with no sweat, or maneuver around modern security camera features, break into highly secured vaults. Basically, what have you? They manage to do feats that they, by any means, they shouldn't have any expertise on how to pull them off, and they just, like, Nicolas Cage shouldn't be able to break into a highly secure bank vault, or manage to do a high-speed car chase. Like, that's obviously something that shouldn't happen. But in National Treasures, they managed to pull it off. And it's fine in your dumb action blockbuster, but the Code Seekers approach, where the people actually constantly try to do what Nicolas Cage does in National Treasure and completely fails to do it. Like, our main hero tries to navigate around the security cameras and be super sneaky when he's measuring the steps in the embassy's land. But of course he's gonna fail it. He's a, bicycle paper boy. He's not a professional braking expert.
Oh, that's true.
So I kind of did appreciate the fact that our heroes make so many, yes, arguably really stupid and illogical mistakes. But at the same time, having spent my time with Nicolas Cage superhero characters, I did kind of enjoy this added level of realism where they just fuck a whole bunch of stuff up.
What do you think is the whole thing with the prostitutes or the trans prostitutes fascination with these directors? Yeah, we have that element in 2 of those films. Really hard to speculate on my part, but it's there. Something I noticed.
I was also kind of surprised to see that in both movies we have a transsexual prostitutes as a minor side characters who show up in the middle of some conflict, play a little role, and then exit the proceedings almost completely. More so in 7 Boxes than in Code Seekers, but they actually at least do have a repeated appearance. But I kinda took it, and this is a pure guess from my end. I have no facts to back any of this up, but I took it that it would be an attempt to, once again, grant the movies a level of grounded realism. Something important to note here is that, well, 7 Boxes obviously, as a film, it's quite realistic, and it wouldn't need this added level of realism through a transsexual character. But 7 Boxes also is the preceding movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's the first movie that this duo makes. The Code Seekers is the follow-up that came out, 7 years after 7 Boxes?
There's a 5-year difference. 7 Boxes 2012 to Gold Seekers 2017.
Okay, yeah, 5-year gap. But with that 5-year gap, you actually can have the directors figuring out what worked, like what elements grant how much realism to your movie, and what elements you can kinda take away from and insert into a next movie. You couldn't have the high gritty violence of 7 Boxes, nor you could have the nihilistic nature of that film's story inserted into the Code Seekers. It would make a tonal clash, and most definitely it would make a film that you couldn't then market for the whole audience. You couldn't show the murders of 7 Boxes in a movie like The Code Seekers. Or you could, but that would be then marked for adults and not the whole family. But what you can do to add realism is you can look at 7 Boxes, take the transsexual side character idea and insert that idea also in the Code Seekers. This way, inserting a tiny bit more grittiness into the Code Seekers. I don't know if this was what they were aiming at, but like that's my casual guess and gamble as a Finn who just watched 3 Paraguayan movies.
I did pay some eye also to some possible cultural differences in the sector, something that you probably wouldn't be able to do or you just simply wouldn't do in Finnish films of today. For example, in the Gold Seekers case, there was what was this part where they are next to a wall or something, and somebody is on somebody's shoulders and just trying to figure out what's going on the other side, and then the guy under this girl is just looking under the dress and says something along the lines that, well, at least I can't complain about the view, and you pig, something of that sort. But
you could do that. You could do that in Finnish cinema. You couldn't do it as casually as the Code Seekers does.
Yeah. Okay. I guess we can talk a little bit more about Seven Boxes. Seven Boxes. Well, hit it, man. What did you think?
I really did like the Seven Boxes.
Yeah.
It was a surprise favorite of mine from this lineup. I was kind of hesitant when the film started. I saw a lot of red flags from, starting directors, small budget, territory-wise, but once it really got going, like once our main character actually has the titular 7 boxes, it kind of takes it's kind of a weird experience because there's kind of a goofy nature in the like the first part, the first act of the film, before the boxes are handed to our main character or before the proceedings to really start. But after the somewhat rocky start, once the box situation really gets going, it all of a sudden it gets really gritty and really dark. And
yes.
once we hit those tones, I was fully on board with the movie.
It gets surprisingly dark, and I was looking at the first 5 or 10 minutes or so of the 7 boxes, and I kept thinking, maybe like you, what is this film trying to tell me? Then I read some reviews online, and I started to think it through again. Like, what are they trying to really do here? And it could, of course, be that he really wants that fancy phone because he's so infatuated by the girl lead of the story, and so just wants to show off to the lady. But I honestly didn't get that feeling when I was started watching the film. Did you have any of those ideas in your head?
Not that idea. To me,
Yeah.
Basically the chemistry with the girl was always casual.
Mm-hmm.
Like there was a possibility for something, but our main character is so locked up, behind his own fantasies that it's kind of like the situation where you have the treasure right in front of you, but because you are constantly thinking that the grass is greener on the other side, you don't actually see the code that is in front of your eyes. So to say, and that's kind of the situation with the girl.
Oh, that's an interesting view.
Perfectly, level-headed, well-meaning girl who is, interested about you. And what our main character ends up doing is treating her like garbage. Basically as something that is usable based on his own whims. He notices her when it suits his needs. When he needs something, then it's like, oh yeah, we've always been friends, I will like you, please help me out in this situation. And once that situation has resolved, he quickly just forgets the girl. What he really is looking at is the bloody cell phone. That's something that he gets constantly remarks on, and something that he basically, that's his drive, his main motivation. And my take on the cell phone was that the cell phone is, for a main character, is a desperate attempt to escape the notion of his own poverty. Like, he comes from obviously, from poor surroundings, does not live the life of luxury. What he has is extremely low-paying manual labor job. He drives a cart and carries other people's groceries. The markets for that type of labor are extremely poor, as we see. There barely is any customers, and he has to fight to tooth and nail for to have one customer. Most people just don't want to pay his services. So he's not making much money. And then he's being presented the possibility to buy the cell phone, which in his budget costs like an obscene fortune. It's 600,000 Paraguayan currency, and this is a character who I guess makes a couple of tenors, 100 local at max per day. So the cell phone is completely out of his reach. So from that perspective, the cell phone can actually, for our main character, the cell phone can serve as a certain type of a totem, something that if he manages to get it, he could then tell to himself that he's not as poor as he is, because at least he has some rich people shit at his disposal.
Yeah. By the way, the Paraguayan currency is called Guarani.
Yeah, that was it.
Yeah.
They do mention the currency's name, the film, couple of times, but I just did not pay enough attention to take it up.
Yeah, it's one of the least valued currencies in South America, and seems to be a kind of still a lack of tourists in the area, and the money is extremely devalued. I felt that the whole beginning of the 5-10 minutes was really needed, though. It well establishes the characters that we're going to be dealing with and their relationship to each other, which is rocky to say the least from the very beginning. There are these two guys, and I couldn't quite figure out if these two guys who start fighting in the marketplace, our antagonist and protagonist, if they have any past relationship with each other. Is he working in the marketplace next to them as well, or what's his whole thing? I think there's a lot of questions that the movie evokes in me, and then I don't get any answers. Not necessarily very important answers, but they're nevertheless there, just raising questions. And we established the inherent need of this guy to get the medication for his kid. So that's his motivation, the signaling for him, and that he has to do something or pay with basically his kid's life. And then the other guy, like you said, we definitely prime it so that our lead character has this tiny moment. You definitely see it. There's this tiny moment where he's just figuring out the calculation in his head. Okay, 600,000 for a fucking phone. And I'm so fucking done with this shit. I want to rise above this. I want this highly paid gig. I want that phone. I want to move away from poverty. Maybe get the girl at the end as well. It wasn't. I wasn't seeing it in the same way as you were. Maybe that the girl was necessarily really mistreated by the guy during the movie. I understood that the main character is dealing with a really important mission. He can't fuck it up. He's laser focused on that. Of course, during that time, the girl has some pretty good ideas, but the way that she kind of carries herself throughout most of this movie is that she is just completely unfocused and doesn't know what the hell is going on, and doesn't seem to be even frankly worth of his time to tell what the hell is going on.
On the other hand, I saw that aspect as a failing of our main character, whose name is Victor. I guess we have to name the characters just in case that,
Yeah, Victor.
that they start to revolve more and more in today's discussion. But yeah, I saw that more as a failing of Victor here, because when it comes to his job, really is not that important. In fact, him keeping with or sticking with his job actually makes him an incredible asshole. It does not start out that way necessarily. Like, you can lend some acceptance for Victor's actions early on in the movie. Like back in the moment when he's first handed the boxes. He does not yet know what the boxes entail. He's only been, shown more money than perhaps he has ever seen in his life, and the people talk about merchandise. The obvious alarm bell that goes inside your head obviously is drugs. Most likely that's also what Victor thinks. or at least he should think that, they are hiring him up to work as a drug smuggler. Well, that already is bad on itself. Obviously, you shouldn't smuggle drugs. You should report to the authorities. Drugs being illegal and shit. But fine. Let's grant Victor his drug mule moment. He really needs the cell phone. So, smuggle some drugs. But later in the film, goddamn, Victor figures out that it's not drugs, it's actually a human body parts because somebody is covering up a goddamn murder.
Yeah,
where they hacked up the body in order to get rid of the evidence. Like, at that moment, after that moment, your job is not important. A murder has happened. You should tell to the cops. That's what any decent person would do. He would report to the authorities, oh, hey, wait a minute, a murder has happened and here's all the body parts. Please solve this case, somebody has died. And Victor just decides that, fuck it, still need the phone. And finally at that was like just a tad bit too much. I was kind of willing to be like yeah, drug smuggler Victor, perhaps an anti-hero, slight good guy, but I'm covering up a murder. Victor is like, dude, you are an asshole.
Well, his situation is super complicated, isn't it? He has already come across some cops who wanted to open the boxes and then just barely was able to convince them to go fuck off. And then later, after he realizes that they are actually human body parts, would he now go to the to the corrupt police that, hey, here's my body parts, what should we do? I don't know. I'm fully innocent, right?
Well, that's what you should do. Still, even with the previous mistake of misdirecting the cops when they were trying to open the boxes. Because the thing still remains. Someone has been killed and the killers are trying to get away with it by hacking up the corpse and, hiding the body parts. Victor himself can't solve the murder and can't bring any peace to the loved ones and relatives of, the unfortunate victim. The only one who can actually do that is the bloody police.
I think it's just
maybe just in the sake of, the loved ones of the victim. Yeah, he should have reported it to the cops and, get a proper investigation going.
I think it's partly played for the laughs that, there's this guy who's just probably taking, whatever the goods are, food items, cell phones, whatever the case, around this little town. But now he has human body parts. Doesn't matter what the product is. I shouldn't know anyway. I'm just gonna move along. I'm gonna finish my mission like a good man that I am from the favela type of neighborhoods. And I'm just gonna finish the mission no matter what. I'm a faithful employee and fuck you for calling me. I'm gonna finish this job. But other than that, what the hell is in the boxes actually? And what 7 boxes? Or 14 boxes? Or what? What's actually... Tell to my dumbass what is happening with the boxes. They already lose the boxes, then they find boxes again because the girl has stuck some boxes into another place. Apparently this has to be absolutely different boxes because they already left the aforementioned boxes to the alleyway. So in one boxes, according to this tomato guy, I call him Mr. Tomato. The Mr. Tomato says that he thought that the tomatoes were supposed to be the lady. Am I having that right? Yeah, Mr. Tomato thinks that the tomatoes are the body parts. So he slices the body into small body parts and puts them into 7 boxes. And in the meanwhile, his boss, manager, let's call him Mr. Teeth. Mr. Teeth was meaning with the tomatoes that it's gonna be some cash that's gonna be delivered. And the lettuce was supposed to be the lady, but they didn't use the code word lettuce in that case. So, what's with the boxes?
With the boxes, what you have basically is you what you have is 7 boxes and all the other boxes are empty. The 7 boxes contain the hacked up body parts of the kidnapped lady. Like, to those who haven't seen the movie and wanna be on track exactly what the hell is going on with the plot, well, spoilers. Too late, way too late in this case. But the movie revolves around a bit like Fargo kind of situation. You have a business owner whose name was something I can't actually remember. Was it Farad or whoever it was? Is the business owner that is being shown to you like during the last 10 minutes of the movie. Yeah. Anyways, that guy has a wife who has a rich father. And the guy has gotten to himself a great idea. I'm gonna have my own wife kidnapped, and then, me and my criminal cohorts are going to, blackmail my wife's dad for some ransom cash. And the whole idea was that, they just keep the kidnapped lady locked up in one room for X number of days until the ransom comes through, and then they just quietly release her. And nobody is the wiser, They stay married, and now all of a sudden all the assholes have a whole bunch of money. Unfortunately, the kidnapped lady kind of panics tries to break out, accidentally cuts his wrist on broken glass, and bleeds to death. And our, criminal cohort's thief and his lackey, especially the lackey, gets the bright idea that he's going to cover up the whole fact that the kidnapped lady has now died, and hacks the body apart and stuffs it inside 7 boxes in small handy body parts. One box has head and the other one has hands, etc., etc., etc.
That part is clear, Henrik, but what about the other cart that they are having with the crates, or boxes, if you will?
It's basically the other cart that they have is nothing more than just, piled up empty boxes. Victor does this stunt once in a movie where he has lost the boxes because he staffs them into an empty warehouse building, and goes to think about his situation. He has just figured out that the boxes contain body parts, so he panics and leaves them unattended for a moment. And unfortunately, at that moment, the whole area catches fire because of some leaking gas bottles, or what was it? And now Victor believes that the boxes are gone. They have burned to crisp. So in order to kind of con the criminals, he stuffs a second cart with empty boxes and tries to present them as, well, here's your delivery, the body parts. He just hopes that he gets paid the rest of his money before anyone notices that, oh my god, hey, these are empty boxes. Okay. And then, after that goes sideways, he then learns that Liz, the young woman who at times accompanies Victor in his mission, actually has followed Victor to the empty warehouse, and before the fire starts, she has actually taken the boxes and, brought them into a safe place. Why she actually does this and does not alert the authorities, it's a valid question. I took it that's because she was infatuated with Victor. I still was hoping that if she somehow proves her capabilities to Victor, Victor might actually see some value in her. Perhaps finally would be kind to her, and that's why he covers up the boxes. But anyways, whatever her reasoning, it still also makes her kind of a shitty person. She too knows that the boxes contain body parts, so somebody has been murdered. And still, I repeat, you should report that shit to the police.
Yeah, but this is a good example, perhaps, of what happens to you when you are faced by a lot of poverty in your area. I was just checking how much actually it is. 600,000 of guaranis, and it amounts to about 80 euros. did amount in 2017, 2018, and does more or less today. So that's really, really nothing. So you can just imagine in what kind of a poverty they are living in.
Yeah, and that really is like I said that these films have the running theme of fuck capitalism. And Seven Boxes has it the strongest.
Yeah.
Because what the whole situation eventually revolves around of is, well, two rich people and their dumbass lackey trying to cover up the fact that they have taken part in conspiracy of kidnapping, which has led to, well, to manslaughter or accidental death, and they are trying to cover the whole shit up by, hacking the corpse in pieces, and then they hire a poor person, to be the body part mule. And basically the rest of the movie is just bunch of desperate poor people fighting over a transportation of, 7 boxes full of body parts.
Yeah.
Because they all hope that, the cargo is something that will somehow, lift them up from poverty. This is the moment where the film's main antagonist, the Nelson, the dude who plays a hand in the most of the violent situations that actually result during the movie. We could say that in this group of assholes, he's the main bad guy. But with that, we also have to take notice that Nelson also does what he does in film in the film, which results in number of additional deaths and murders. His reasoning for that is that Nelson also is a poor person who believes that the boxes contain 600 or was it 250,000 US dollars.
Yeah.
Which would be something like 1,600,000,000 in local currency. So it would be a huge deal of money to him. And he's kind of desperate because he has a sick son and, starving wife, and the son needs medicine. So even though Nelson perhaps is the main antagonist, and if you can say the main bad guy of the film, but and what Nelson does in course of the film, it most definitely, it's wrong, it's not acceptable, but Nelson also is the guy who has a better motivation for what he does than Victor. Victor wants a cell phone, Nelson wants to save his son, and also Nelson does not know that the boxes have body parts in them. Victor has that knowledge. Nelson thinks that the boxes contain American dollars.
Apart from all of this, what we've said about Victor so far, there's also this kind of a blood thread that we follow, that Victor is really interested in, well, not only cinema, but being famous. And it seems that whatever he's looking at the screens, at least from the initial one, every time he's looking at the TV screens, it seems that he is in those scenes. So he kind of sees himself being in those scenes. And this finally happens by the end of the film, when he becomes a sort of a famous person for what he did. He was in this dangerous situation but survived to tell the story, and was some kind of a hero of this story. So he has this big smile at the end of the film, and that's the finishing touches. I don't know what this was exactly. Was this kind of making fun of the poor people in Paraguay, that they watch a lot of TV and that's their way of entertainment and maybe their way to relax, and they identify with it a lot? Maybe they watch a lot of TV, and Victor is some kind of a funny cliche case of this situation. I'm not sure.
I didn't take it that way. Of course, your assessment of the poor people and TV is somewhat true. The fact is that poor people actually have less ways to entertain themselves on their free time than those who are well off and rich. don't have the high-end PC gaming rigs or the latest consoles, and can't really spend their free time going through their stock options because, once again, poor. So it's quite natural that they actually really do spend quite a lot of time watching TV on their free time, because they also need some way to unwind after a hard day.
Mm-hmm.
And TV is one of the few luxuries that they actually, can have.
Yeah.
If even that. Not everybody can afford a bloody TV. But I didn't take that was what the film was trying to say. My reading was that it was, once again, it was like to stick with the take that this is a movie that does not really have a good guy in it. It has a bunch of different level of assholes. This would kind of be highlighting also the fact, because part of Victor's asshole nature would be that he really just wants to be famous.
Mm-hmm.
No matter how, by any means necessary. And, well, Victor loses the money, obviously. This happens early on in the film when he's presented a $100 bill that has been torn in half. The promise is that he gets the other half after the job is done, and later it's been, revealed that if the money is torn in two, it loses its value. It can't be used. So Victor never had a chance of getting that $100. The dumbasses managed to fuck up even that for him. So the only victory that he can actually get is his chance at being famous. His 15 minutes of fame. And that's actually what he manages to get at the very end. And I took that was really like, that was where the whole thing was going on. It showed you a person who dreams of being some type of famous person, no matter how. And at the end of the day, he's smiling because he finally got his wish.
Yeah, and definitely TV is this kind of a mirror into the high life, the better life. And it's something that he's dreaming about, and at least he gets part of his wishes to come true. He doesn't exactly become a rich person by the end, I suppose, but he gets something that he wanted. Talking of the cinematography of the film, well, this is more notable than the Gold Seekers. We have, this high angles, drone shots, and then we have these interesting chase scenes, frankly. I think it's all done very well. There's some kind of experimentalist takes or original camera angles under the cart, or looking at the face from a high angle of the character when he's running with the carts, walking with the carts, and things like that. And especially the starting of the film. There's this time-lapse effect going on when we start off. Kind of kicks you in the gear. It's cool stuff.
Yeah, the cinematography, I also agree with you. I do think that it's more... I don't say better, but perhaps more energetic. At least more inventional than what it was in the Gold Seekers.
Yeah. There were some
and this
people...
might, of course, once again play into the Code Seekers more obviously being a film that has been meant for everybody and meant for international consumption. So, of course, if you wanna push your movie to the mass market, it's easier to push if you use typical cinematography and don't try to do any artsy-fartsy extra trickery with your camera.
Yeah, or that shallow depth of field when the character just kind of goes inside the blur when Nelson is giving that evil eye to the cashier at the pharmacy when she refuses to give any medication for any kind of a payment or down payment. And yeah, he just disappears into the blur. I enjoy those kind of small details quite a bit. So, but not only the camera work in the film, but there's also some pretty cool music in the film. And actually, the guy who did the music for the Gold Seekers, Derlis A. Gonzalez, he's supposedly the more better known Paraguayan film composer who has actually made some touches on Hollywood side of things as well. Whereas the guy who did the music for Seven Boxes, Fran Villalba, maybe not so well known from what I can gather. But nevertheless, I found the music kind of interesting and different. And what do you think? It just gave a different energy for some of those chase scenes. And there were even some comments that said that the energy of the film is kind of off, on, off, on, off, on, and it gets a little exhausting. I didn't have that experience at all. What about you?
No. I can kind of see the argument. Like perhaps when it comes to the energy of the movie, there, you can say that there perhaps is an off on situation going on. The movie resolves very much in the way where you are shown a scene of a highly exciting chase scene or something of the sort, and then the next scene is much more quieter, much more slower,
Yeah.
and you have you have situations where the from one chase scene you then transition into the moment when Victor's sister goes up the stairs to the room where the girl was being held hostage and sees the crime scene. And that's also a very long scene. It's a very slow scene. It really takes its time. It builds its mood slowly, gradually. And in that way, yeah, certainly you can have off on situation when it comes to the tension of the movie. But I actually quite liked it. For me, it was not a problem.
Something that you definitely can't escape from in Spanish world, let's say Latino world, seems to be the Latino beat, which goes like I used to listen to that every fucking day in Spanish, and I was so sick of it. But now listening to it, maybe I have some, I don't know, nostalgia, but it's fine in small doses for me.
Yeah, well, I've been exposed to it, well, very recently only through these movies, so my exposure has been really small.
Overall, really enjoyable film once again. Really enjoyed it. I'm glad you had some fun too. Should we talk about the Heiresses at this point?
Yep.
Okay, the Heiresses.
Sure.
The Heiresses. Well, this might get a little tricky, might get a little interesting if we want to talk about how this would be viewed if we would gender flip this film. But anyway, your quick thoughts.
Well, you really managed to catch me off guard with your question.
Okay.
I don't know. Perhaps I would believe that even in gender flip scenario, there really would not be any problems with it. Like the audience wouldn't react in any remarkable way, even if this movie would be gender flipped.
Okay, I will say that technically, story-wise, I think it's a really engaging film for what it is. It's a really slow film, but then again, it's not dropping your attention, I would say. That it's really meticulously planned, really interesting cinema. But the thing is that in some way I've seen this before so many times, and that's not even the problem. Or is it? One of the problems here, well, might be a potential problem, actually is that I don't really understand why every time we have women in this situation, it's just, well, let me put it this way. If you have a guy and a girl in a relationship in a movie, and for whatever reason, then the girl goes off and the guy is having some fun for a couple of months, and then realizes that, oh, maybe I like this girl a little bit more. That would be... this guy would be fucking nailed to the wall. But when it comes to the woman, when it's a woman relationship, let's say like a woman-woman relationship in this situation, it's actually art. It's beautiful, it's quaint, it's dramatic, it's artful, and it makes for movies that are given prizes all over the world. And somehow it's something really deep and emotional and really touches your heart. And I don't understand what is this dichotomy here that you totally change it when you have a different gender situation. And not only, what I think the movie is doing very strongly, it's supposed to be doing, is that this is two women who come from a pretty affluent background, obviously, and then the other girl has had some misdeeds during her life, is now completely in debt, has some mistakes, okay, still doesn't change the situation. That what the other party is doing here, to me, frankly, it just feels wrong. I know that she gravitates towards the less of a high life, is looking for something different, maybe something more real, I don't know. She just seems to not connect with her lover anymore, and then goes on and finds a really young woman and seems to strike some kind of a connection with her. But then again, yeah, so what? I think they didn't play the affluency part maybe strong enough that I would be like, oh, okay, wow, the affluence is so bad for her that she must escape the shackles of the affluent life as soon as possible and just find something where people have actually interesting conversations around me. I really don't give a fuck about this neighbor's lady who is always complaining in my car and gossiping about people. I don't want to have this life anymore. I guess that's what it's supposed to be doing, but how am I supposed to feel empathy for this character, Chela? Frankly, I don't really.
I didn't have your problems, but I can very well understand where you are coming from. Because looking at this one, I too got the vibes that, I've kind of seen this one before. It wasn't distracting for me, and it did not become a problem. But I do maintain that there are aspects in this movie that still play into the whole idea of, crafting the identity of the Paraguayan cinema. I did get that, this is a Paraguayan movie feeling from this one.
And it's definitely about class, kind of fitting in the theme.
And I would say the reason for me getting that Paraguayan vibe is because of the class aspect. Because as a film, it's a very kind of slow, downplayed drama. You have a handful of characters that kind of revolve around each other. Story is very simple. One goes to prison, another one has to finally, take up driving a car. It's something that you can take all of that. You can easily imagine it, for example, being a French film. Small French drama, and you wouldn't actually see the difference. The reason you see the difference here, I would say, the reason why this still is very much a Paraguayan movie is because the French would not take the class aspect.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe this is something that we're going to see even more and more in the South American cinema if we're going to delve deeper that class aspect. And maybe to be noted that as far as if I've understood this correctly, the main cast, if not the entire cast, is new stars, just making their debut here. So when you think about that, that's fucking incredible. Some of those performances, I think, are really wonderful in the film. And this is the first feature film of the director as well.
Yeah, the director here Marcelo Martinessi. Most likely butchering the name, apologies for that, but...
Marcelo Martinez, I think that's correct, yeah.
Yeah. But, yeah, he's mostly known for short films and documentaries. That's like... That's where his background is on. Three documentary movies, the rest of them are shorts. So the Heiresses would be his feature film, the first full-length movie that he has done. So it's not really, it's not a director who hasn't done anything before, but it is a first-time feature film director. And I do agree with you. It's a really good job. Altogether, even as a film, it's a really good job, and I would say it's a remarkable job, knowing that we are dealing with, first-time feature film director who is working with first-time actors.
Yeah, quite astonishing. I'm gonna keep this guy on my radar if I can. I was expecting this film to be quite a bore. I was expecting this to be something really deeply emotional, but on a kind of a chick flick level that I would really not care for. But this was a good movie. I will give it that much. Again, I think it has pretty good cinematography and audio design. Really, frankly, all around, it's surprisingly great filmmaking from a first timer. Well, in the feature film sense. And it's hard to say if he incorporated some of his documentary film skills into this feature film. For sure, yeah. Maybe it's those intimate shots with the blurred background of the characters, so kind of studying their faces. Maybe it's those repeating angles in the car, just holding the shot for a long time. Maybe also in documentary filmmaking you pay a lot of attention to sounds or singular sounds, just carrying one scene with just a really few simple kind of audio tracks going in the background. I don't know, but yeah, that might make sense.
Yeah, I too would state that you can kind of see the documentary background here. It's kind of muddled because, well, the cinematic language of the movie is, well, very much the cinematic language of European, art, drama, film scene. Like, I said it before. There's a lot here that you could just, take directly and just put it into a French setting, and you would have a French drama movie. That also partly goes to cinematography. But I also kind of do... I do claim that you can see the documentary background of the director in kind of the way how, especially inside the car, the camera stays very close to the characters. And in the way how the camera repeatedly frames the one talking in the image, like the image focuses on whoever is actually saying the line at any given time. And there's a level of a ground level control here that I can believe is stemming from the documentaristic background of the filmmaker.
Yeah. Well, speaking of in story terms, there seems to be also one kind of curious scene where Chela goes to the prison to see Chiqui or Chiquita, right? And Chiqui goes to shower, and then Chela sees this one person who is behind the bars. She refuses to open the bars for her. So this seems to be suggesting that maybe there was a relationship going on between these two inmates. But why is she so adamant to get in so badly at this moment? I'm not sure what was supposed to be the message here, but seems to be that there has been some relationships going on behind their backs all the time.
Yeah, I didn't get this image from the film itself, But I read it online that what's supposed to go on, between the chemistry of these characters would be that while Chiquita is in jail, Chela starts to fear that Chiquita is making new romantic ties with other inmates inside the prison. And like I said, I did not personally get that feeling or picture when I watched the movie, but this is what the wise voices of the internet knew to tell me, that this is something. This is supposed to be one of those below surface tensions that start to develop between Chela and Chiquita. So perhaps the shower scene, altogether the scenes between Chela and Chiquita inside the prison premises, I'm guessing that that's what they were driving at. Like they were trying to show you Chela's growing suspicions and worry that Chiquita is paying a bit too close of an eye to some of her fellow inmates in sexual and romantic sense.
Perhaps. Well, sharing of cigarettes can hardly be anything romantic or sexual, but there's a couple of these scenes
I don't know. There's a whole tradition of American movies from 30s and 40s where sharing a cigarette was, well, it was the first spark of a blossoming romance, and it was a highly sensual affair.
Well, yeah. Certainly there were many scenes where there were these new people that she had met, and she was telling all about them and how they were treating her and what kind of observations she had inside the cell. Well, frankly, what else can she do? But yeah, I can see what that movie might be telling me. I didn't really get that very strongly, that it was trying to hint in that way. And frankly, there may have been a couple of those under the surface things going through at least two of tonight's movies, 7 Boxes and the Heiresses, where I wasn't really registering what it was telling me.
Yeah, on my end, I was paying too much of an attention, once again, to the fuck all the capitalists theme.
Is that really strong here? Did you, when going into this, okay, it's these rich guys and the rich, poor people?
It's not as strong as it was in 7 Boxes, and not even as strong as it was in The Code Seekers. But I do think that it still is a theme in the movie. Like the whole crisis that these people have, the whole Chela Chiquita situation, it starts from the point where, once again, they don't have money.
Mm-hmm.
That they have appearances to be upheld. They obviously, their past is with the money. That they have been rich, or they're coming from rich families, or something like that. But they come from surroundings where certain type of appearance is mandatory. You have to live big. You have to have nice paintings. You have to have expensive silverware. You have to have your crystal glasses. That's, all your rich friends expect that you have those things. And obviously, Chiquita and Sela, they have fallen in some rough times. The money has stopped flowing in, and if there has been some inheritance, it has already been spent. They are kind of broke, is what I'm saying. But they still want to keep up those appearances, which leads them to kind of secretly and extremely shamefully selling off, different parts of their house, or, the stuff they have. They sell a painting here, they sell a kitchen table there, they sell the silverware. And this is something that they both, but especially Sela, is ashamed of. She hides in the shadows while the shoppers show up. hesitant to show her face to them because, admitting that would admit that you are no longer rich. And then Chiquita goes to jail because apparently, and this is how I took it, in order to keep up the appearances, she has tried to play a small financial hoax. She has tried to get herself a bank loan that she really, couldn't have gotten. So she has tried to mislead the bank in order to get the loan. Once again, has tried to do a small criminal act in order to get more money so that they can, keep up the appearances of the rich people. But once Chiquita goes to jail, all of a sudden Chela has to take up the job, has to start drive the car, and once again she is kind of ashamed of doing this. She kind of gets into it more and more as the film goes on, but her initial reaction to being this kind of what essentially is a glorified cab driver is something like she's not really happy about it. Once again, she's ashamed. When her first client, then the neighbor's lady, is offering her some money for the gas expenses, she's kind of refusing to take them. It's not because she wouldn't need them. Once again, this is a lady who is selling her own silverware because she is broke, but now she's refusing to take some cash. Because once again, that would make her a taxi driver. And that's a poor people shit.
Yeah.
But as she gets more into the whole taxi driver thing, as her financial situation kind of gets a little bit better, at least good enough that they can still keep the household help. They are broke, but they need a goddamn maid for because simply for the reason that, they are rich and rich people can't live without their maids. So, you have to have that running expense, I guess. But she gets financially secure enough to keep the maid. And as a result, what does she do? She completely starts to now, mistreat Chiquita. Does not show up to the meetings. If she does, she's kind of anxious to get the fuck out. Chiquita is in prison where amidst with all the other poor people. And at the very end of the movie, she no longer even, remembers what is the visitation day. Completely forgets even that. Her friend / lover for 30 years is in prison and you forget the goddamn visitation date. Yeah. Sure. And then once Chiquita gets out of the prison, well, at this point, Chela has already kind of found the idea that she has her own freedom and her own new set of, social circles. So it's not so she does not warmly welcome Chiquita back. Instead, what she does is she apparently steals Chiquita's car and just drives it off to somewhere. End credits.
Yeah. Very interesting. What of a kind of a crush for the character that she was waiting on to Angie to come back, but then it's actually just Chiquita, and you can just see the kind of a pain and confusion and letdown in her eyes. Kind of a nice moment. There, she also builds a kind of very nice relationship with the maid, Patty. There is one scene in particular which was nice and kind of channels to you that Chela is starting to become more and more perhaps understanding towards the poor people. That's a really bad way to say it, but they kind of level there. They see these two women who are there to possibly buy the silverware or some other stuff. There are many moments where in the story there are people who are coming to the house and they are maybe potentially buyers for something, but then every time Chela or the maid has to say that, no, that is not for sale, no, that is not for sale, no, that is not for sale. So they still want to keep up the appearances, like you said, but they want to cling on to something that has sentimental value or just will enable them to keep up the appearances. And in this one scene, they are just looking, the maid and the Chela are just looking at each other when the woman who are there to buy things, they ask some kind of silly questions about the whole process, what they can have and what they can have. I can't remember it exactly, but yeah, great moments like that, connection between the characters, wonderful characters throughout all of these three films, by the way. And yeah, what else to say about the Heiresses?
I don't really know if there is that much ground to cover anymore with the film. I've ranted about capitalism for 9 years once again, also for this segment. And we have praised the actors, the direction, and the camera work.
But what do you think when a woman betrays? Let's put it in simple terms. If a woman betrays in a movie, is it? This is a bad word. Maybe I just made it up. But is it empathizable? Should you empathize? Should you consider all the options? Maybe there is some good reason, a moral reason for doing that. Do you think there's something like this in this movie? Is it acceptable what she did? They did, perhaps.
Kind of a lot to unpack there, but let's try. That's a complicated question. There's a lot of questions that are asked at the same time. When it comes to cheating altogether, we as a society, we see it very black and white situation. The cheater obviously is at wrong, and the one being cheated upon is the helpless victim. I personally don't believe that any situation of cheating is that simple and that black and white. There's a lot personal and psychological things that goes into the act of cheating.
And emotional misunderstandings.
Yeah, that too. It does not necessarily make the act of cheating right, not necessarily acceptable, not necessarily even forgivable. But I do say that the one doing the cheating in relationship, he or she is not automatically some type of a great Satan, like we usually want to perceive them as, if that makes any sense. Like there are nuances. There are many sides to the act. Is it? Does this film kinda downplay the fact? Does it want you to emphasize with, well, what essentially is Chela, if not actually doing the act, at least partly fantasizing about cheating? Yeah, it does. Chela never does anything physical, and I'm on the camp that if you don't do the act, you can have the casual thought. Like, mind does what it does, you can't really control it. Heart says what it says. You can't have an absolute control over them. You can have control over your actions, but not necessarily an occasional idea.
Yeah, you can still realize what those thoughts are. And maybe you have to realize where to pull the brakes, even emotionally.
Yeah, and I got the feeling that Chela kinda pulls the brakes here.
Well, yeah. Well, Chela could kind of cheat herself into thinking that this is still kind of okay. This is just a girl that I met that I kind of like. I like her as a friend. It's not, of course, true at all, really. But she realizes that it's going too far. Yeah.
Then again, does cinema altogether kind of have this idea that if it's a woman doing the cheating, be it, homosexual or heterosexual relationship, are movies in general portraying the cheating woman in a softer light than a cheating male? In my opinion, yeah.
Yeah.
Usually, especially dramas, if you have the situation where a woman character is doing the cheating, it's usually it's being shown very sympathetically, like you're showing the reasoning behind the act.
Yeah.
You're supposed to understand why this happened, and through understanding, perhaps even accept and sympathize with the act of cheating. When it's man doing the cheating, more or less often or not, it's, the dude is just an asshole and you better dump his sorry ass as fast as you can.
What's the end of the world film that we watched from Norway?
The worst person in the world.
The worst person in the world. There we are kind of dealing with the same themes, that there's a lady who just lived this crisscrossing life and changes the man every time she decides that she's had enough.
Yeah. And I'm not fully on board with that trend. Like I'm not really championing the idea that if of course you can have a movie that shows the act of cheating and ask for sympathy towards the cheater. That is okay, but I do kind of feel that the current trend where every single time if woman cheats on a relationship in a movie, it's always somehow sympathetic and acceptable behavior. I kind of do think that that's a harmful trend, or at least it's a trend that I'm kind of tired of seeing. At the same time, I kind of understand why that is happening. Like, I see it as a result, as a counter action to the way how male characters have acted in movies for, couple of decades now. Like we have the long tradition of James Bonds, of Indiana Joneses, you name it. Male characters who constantly, has casual sex all over the place. No matter are they in relationship or are they not in relationship or what the hell their status is. Indiana Jones slept with what? A 15-year-old student. in the background story of Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Right.
And that was supposed to be okay. But that has been kind of the trend with male characters for a really long time in cinema. So I kind of see the current trend of female cheaters being okay just as a counter reaction to this. I don't really accept it. I do think that we should kind of move on. Should move past that trend and just kind of admit that cheating, even though sometimes understandable, and even though at times, fine, make a movie that asks sympathy for the act, but it shouldn't be okayed so wildly as it currently is.
Yeah, this is
especially with this dichotomy of cheaters in cinema. But I can kind of understand why we are in this situation.
Yeah, it's a multi-layered question, and there's also, for example, a level that usually when a female, quote-unquote, cheats or leaves a relationship, secretly, perhaps, is because the male character of the relationship is a complete asshole. But not always, but in many cases, the male character is some kind of a huge monster who has done something horribly wrong, is beating up women or whatever the case. Totally fair depiction of men, mind you, but I'm just saying that there's been that kind of a depiction where it's understandable, and then there is this other depiction where it seems to be a leveled relationship. They seem to be liking each other, but then the woman just decides, okay, no more, because I have this really complicated drama in my head.
Yeah, and a good example of this, and where this one is going, would be, I don't know if you've seen, like Hollywood had this female actress, Meg Ryan, who made whole bunch of romantic comedies during her heyday. And whole bunch of those romantic comedies actually had the plot line where Meg Ryan is already in a relationship, starts to think about, starting a new relationship with another guy, meaning that she has to break up her current relationship, obviously. And, then you have the breakup scene. And typically in Meg Ryan movies, that breakup is shown as being extremely healthy and actually what both sides really wanted. The dude is kicked out of the door and he just goes with a merry smile on his face, gets in the cab and just drives off the movie completely. That was like Meg Ryan, a relationship breakup template that got repeated in goddamn so many Meg Ryan romantic comedies. So that's also like you talked about the way when the when the woman walks out of the level-headed relationship. So there you have, that trope being played out to a point of a cliche simply in the career of one female actor. Like this, if you would have a subgenre of Meg Ryan movies, you would have that template playing on constantly. When woman breaks up the relationship, when she's the one who decides that, yeah, we have run our course, then the act is healthy, and, it's what them dude also wanted, obviously. He just didn't know it yet.
Absolutely, Henrik. And would it be the quickies?
Yeah.
Special mention for an actor goes to...
The special mention for an actor goes to, at least more from my end, to Anna Brun, who played Chela in the Heiresses.
Absolutely valid. I was thinking about that too, but could go for many people in these movies, frankly. I will just throw the dice. Let's give it to newcomer Tomas Arredondo, just leading the Gold Seekers from beginning to end as his first goddamn movie. Bring to attention some very small role in the film that you found somehow worth highlighting for whatever reason, could be whatever.
I really don't have anything solid to offer here. I go with, I don't know, chopped off woman's head in 7 boxes. Really great performance.
Well, that's a tough one to beat. Let's say that I will give it to... Let's just give some hands for the prostitute performances in general. What resonated with you the most or the least?
For me it was... There's a certain level of grit in these movies, and in a lack of a better word, and this is bad, but there's a level of poorness in these movies in a down to earth kind of way. So from my end, that's what resonated with me the most.
For me, it's the character. Character. Even if they might be over the top, I think we have really strong characters in all of these 3 films. Fun to watch, different, engaging, solid work on that front in all of them. Absolutely. In one adjective, how would you describe these films?
My adjective would be carefully borrowing-esque. all in one word, no sentences. And I hope it's an adjective. My reasoning is, and this is more case with the Code Seekers really and Heiresses than with 7 boxes. But like we talked about, there is a level, there's a kind of an essence of American and French movies, especially in these 2 films. They kind of borrow some elements, some essence from those countries. Not saying it's a bad thing. And I'm not like making a claim that they copy or steal. Like the leading word here was carefully.
I would say, I will say thoughtful. And there's a lot of love that has been put into these films. That is like oozing out there. Not always the most original ideas, and that's okay. Just really labor of love is happening in all 3 films.
Yeah, Paraguay, like you stated in the introduction, is a country that does not really have a booming film industry, which also means that, unlike with Hollywood, movies in Paraguay really ain't like this mega business where you really get in for the money. So if you become a film maker in Paraguay, a certain level of passion and love for the sport is needed. And it kind of shows.
Yeah, kind of like when you make your first film of a trilogy or a franchise. The first one is the kind of labor of love. You maybe accept the film to make at least enough money to feed your children, but then it overblows and your heart is just not in it anymore.
Yeah, and then you tie it up with a surprisingly good meta film and criticism of the franchise and the fan base itself, like it was case in the newest Halloween trilogy.
Yeah. Do you think these films have any staying power, legacy?
That's a tricky one. Like mentioned, Paraguay does not have a huge film industry, and every movie that gets made kind of feeds into the chance of film industry someday being born. So that someday there is like this higher idea of a Paraguayan cinema. And I do think that when it comes to that goal, yes, these films will have a legacy, at least in Paraguay. However, when it comes to international legacy, that unfortunately I can't promise. The problem there is perhaps the competition from US, the competition from France, that can limit kinda exactly how interesting people will find these movies out to be. And it may cost these movies like the international legacy. But if someday Paraguay actually does have a booming film industry, and they have for example, their own version of Hollywood, I do think that at that point, these films will be looked back upon as one of the first comers upon which, the further Paraguayan industry then would have been built upon.
Yeah, sadly it seems that within Paraguay one does not simply make a film, and to this day the Gold Seekers is the latest movie that the directing duo Juan Maneglia and Tana Schémbori have put out, so it might take a couple of years before we get another one from these greats. But if someday these guys, or whoever it will be, the Paraguayan next star of their cinema land, if Paraguay ever breaks into the truly big leagues, yeah, sure, I think we will go back and look at the kind of the foundations or the kind of building blocks or something that started the whole Paraguayan film craze and go and watch 7 boxes. Why not?
Yeah, and if you are Paraguay itself and you're looking at like how to kickstart the film industry, you are always free to contact the 2 Finns. We are happy to come there and help you out to start a proper film industry and get it off the ground. Let's make Paraguayan Hollywood happen.
Yeah. I can give you some great shots with an artsy blurry background on them.
I can give you some blurry shots with some background in it.
Put the films in order of preference.
From my end, the lineup is 7 boxes, and after that it gets a bit tricky, but the follow-up would be the Heiresses and the Code Seekers on the 3rd place. Not meaning to say that the Code Seekers is a bad movie in any way.
Before I forget to ask about it, the Gold Seekers, the ending is a little unconventional, ends to a brick wall. In a sense, everything had been already done. Perhaps more could have been shown. Maybe the last enthusiastic moment when they actually get to have the money, if they ever get to, in fact, get to have the money. What do you think about the ending of the film? Did it satisfy you, or it was like okay?
It did satisfy me. Though I do have to admit, it's not the traditional way to end the movie. It kind of ends the movie. The movie ends kind of in the middle of the proceedings. They do identify where the money is at, or where the diamonds are at. And they realize that, they are not in any present danger. The granny still has them. But it also the movie ends in the middle of the action. I don't feel that the movie needed to go any longer than it did. Like, it was a fine place to end the movie. But once again, to harken back into your national treasures, the typical fodder that we get into this lost treasure adventure genre, the usual way to end it, the way how lost national treasure movies end, is they find the treasure, they get back from their adventure, and then they are lazily hang around in some location. Usually the main character's mansion. And they are just kind of like, oh boy, that was a crazy adventure. Somebody's, it sure was. I wonder what these letters mean. And then they start to open the sequel page letter. Or something like that. End credits.
Yeah. Yeah, I felt a little underwhelmed by the ending, because I was looking for some kind of satisfaction for the characters, that the release, that okay, they reached some kind of a goal. But it's the same thing in 7 Boxes in a way. They don't get to the riches. There's more to be gained in the end of 7 Boxes. But yeah. But the films in order of preference. 7 Boxes, and like you, it gets a little tough here. I don't know. Like I said, I don't really agree with some of the decisions in the Heiresses. It's a little tricky one, but I do like a hell of a lot there. The performances, it's an interesting movie to follow. Great drama building, fantastic cinematography and places. Whew. I don't know. I could even make it a tie. These are completely different kind of films.
Ties have been made in course of this podcast's history.
Have I really? I don't think I've ever given a tie myself to anything.
If memory serves me correct, I may have made a tie in at some point.
Okay. Gosh, good stuff here. I'm just gonna call it a tie, you know what? Let's do it. Complete the sentence. You really know you're watching some Paraguayan cinema when
during your leisurely car drive you suddenly realize that we have nothing to lose but our chains.
You really know you're watching Paraguayan cinema when you have treasures and chandeliers and boxes full of body parts. Did you like these 3 films?
I did, not equally. I had my obvious favorite, and I did have my little problems with the Heiresses and the Code Seekers. But yeah, I must admit, I really do like all of these movies.
I'm really happy. I never really know what to expect with you, even though we've done over 150 plus podcast episodes. I never know exactly what's gonna happen in these recordings.
It's the ominous shadow of the Hubo episode once again looming behind me.
One of those examples. I absolutely did like all of these films. I absolutely did. Some more than others. I've got nothing really to add beyond that. Yeah, I had fun. I had some real fun. It's been a while maybe since I've had a lot of fun and refreshing cinema time here in the lab. Would you watch these films again?
I will definitely check out 7 Boxes again at some date. Perhaps even show it to others. And most likely I will also show Code Seekers to someone. When it comes to Heiresses, I'm not entirely certain if I will check that one out again. It's not a bad film, but at the same time, it's a movie that can more easily be, buried under your French dramas, your Michael Haneke movies, etc. The watch list of movies that you kinda still have to go through. And it might be that, the Heiresses just unfortunately gets beneath that list.
Yeah, even all its artistic merits aside, maybe we've seen it many times before. Although, yeah, we did mention some benefits that the movie does have. This was one of the few times in the podcast, well, at least in recent memory, where I was like watching these films, some of them more or less for the second time, and I was like, hey, maybe I should actually. These were so much fun that I would like to even watch this for the third time with my boyfriend, and yeah, never really had that kind of thoughts because usually we get stuck into the to the artsy and the weird, but these are fun for the whole family. Would you recommend the Gold Seekers, the Heiresses, and Seven Boxes?
I most definitely will recommend Seven Boxes. I do recommend the Heiresses, even though most likely I won't be checking it out for a second time, but I much like, your other drama films, if you like drama movies, if nothing else, The Heiresses works as a one-time watch, I would say. And I'm giving the Code Seekers a recommendation with some reservations. It's I once again I highlight it's not a bad movie, and there really is like I do think that you should check out Code Seekers. What you may end up doing while watching it might be doing the same thing that I did, which, is kind of a mistake, but we can't help ourselves, which is that you start to compare it to, the other treasure-seeking adventure movies. And at that point, you may draw the unfortunate comparison to the budgets and how this would have been shot that way in National Treasure and how there would have been more, sets and locations and CGI and what have you. And it may kind of shadow your watching experience, kind of like it did for me. But if that happens, it's unfortunate. It is a bit unfair towards the movie, I admit. But at the same time, the movie chose its own genre. I didn't force it to make code-seeking movie. And the movie did its decision completely knowingly. I do maintain that it's a consistent decision made by the film, and it's made in order to appeal a larger audience. Perhaps even the international market, and when you approach the international market, you obviously, will draw comparison to other international movies. Just unavoidable, even though perhaps in this case bit unfortunate. But even with that, that's a risk that may loom behind your viewing experience of the Code Seekers, but I still do recommend that you check the film out.
There you go. I would recommend all three of them. I'm a little bit on the edge with the Heiresses. You can definitely, whatever you think about the Gold Seekers, you can have a whole lot of fun with that film, I'm sure. Whether you're kind of some reviewer who has been reviewing films, a critic for several years, you may have grown a little tired of the job, and it sometimes feel a little soul crushing to go through movies that just seem to repeat themselves over and over and over. Where have I seen this movie before? Oh, it's just a reincarnation of the same stuff. But recommendation for all three, even though I had all of that whining about the Heiresses, still worth a watch, absolutely. And I guess that's kind of the meat and chunk of this episode. Dear listener, would you recommend these films, in case you can find them? If you have access to Amazon and its movie library, Amazon Prime, that is accessible in its full form for the Americans out there, perhaps for the Canadians as well, I think you can find at least a couple of these movies there. For the rest of us, good luck. But that there are ways. There's a will and then there's a way. And Henrik, speaking of will and way, These are in no way related to each other in any way, but where do you want to go next? Would you like, as a topic for the next episode, cancer, Uruguay, or pig fucking?
I already know where the pig fucking is going. we are not taking that road. I like to stay with happy themes and happy thoughts, seeing how I myself am a positively thinking, happy person with no problem, psychological problems at all. So I choose cancer.
Oh, this is gonna be some bad karma for us. But yeah, I was just the perfect subject for us too. But I've thought about it for a while. There's a couple of really strong movies about cancer. It's just it's a topic that we usually want to avoid as people. But perhaps because of particularly this reason that we want to avoid it, maybe we should just face it dead on and find out how we would feel about it in movie form.
Yeah, so, in the next episode, cancer. We are going to look at it. It's not going to be even films. We are just going to, find a cancer tumor somewhere and just look at it for 5 hours. And then talk about our experience.
Oh, but something happy to the end of this episode. I learned some cultural things. There are 2 food items that you could check out that are Paraguayan. For example, chimichurri. It includes parsley, and it's a kind of a sauce that you use for your meat delicacies. There's also something called terere. It's a yerba mate, a drink that the Paraguayans are apparently very happy about. It's an infusion of yerba mate prepared with cold water. Then there's a lot of ice and however you pronounce that, pohanana, which is medicinal herbs. But yeah, perhaps we should try them at some point. That's that. Any thoughts before we throw our lab coats into the empty void made by the heart of an affluent lesbian?
Well, you had it me at the lesbian. Let's go.
Okay. Cancer in a fortnight, and we would like to invite you to continue this conversation with us online. And we'll hope to see...
Which will also give you cancer.
I can't anymore.
Our place in hell is certain.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us. See you in a fortnight.
Until then.
Onko se nyt liian matalalla? Taidaanpa laittaa vähän lisää volyymia vieläkin. Tillin tallin. Okei. Okay. Paraguay. No, kaikille pitää pystyä nauramaan vähän.